All right. Um, I'd like to take this opportunity and discuss the third part of time value of money and discount cash flow. All right. So, in the first two parts, we discussed the basics about present value, future value, and also the treatment for single cash flows as well as for multiple cash flows. All right, just to reiterate, our methodology is to break down the multiple cash flow valuation problems into multiple single cash flow valuation problems. All right, so you can review the previous examples we did. All right, so today I'm going to discuss the special kinds of multiple cash flows. All right, so these are basically annuities and perpetuities. Okay, so you may have discussed this already in your first class to finance. All right, and annuities are basically equalized cash flow streams. All right, so that's the one of the most defining features for annuity. All right, so the cash flows, they're all equal. Cash flows will end eventually. So the time horizon is finite. All right, it could be 1 billion periods, but the point is, the cash flows will stop eventually. All right, and interest rate does not change over the course of this periods. All right, and these are also cash flows occur regularly. Okay, so it could be at the beginning of every period, it could be in the middle, or it could be at the end of every periods. All right, so these are the defining features of annuities, and there are two kinds of annuities. Okay, one is ordinary annuity. All right, so this is the case where cash flows occur, at the end of each period. Okay, so remember, we're talking about multiple periods. We're talking about having cash flows in each of these periods. Okay, so cash flows occur regularly. All right, but for ordinary annuities, the cash flows occur at the end. Whereas for annuity due, all right, so the cash flows occur at the beginning, okay, of each period. All right, so this is difference in the timing of the cash flows. All right, so these are very important issues for us to be aware of. All right, as I said, you may have dealt with this already in Finance 201. The other thing I want to go over briefly is Excel functions for annuities. All right, I'll move on to examples in a second. All right, so but bear with me when I discuss these details here. All right, so you have single cash flows. All right, so I'm just going to make a little table here, and then I'm going to actually look at annuities here. All right, so Excel functions. You can have future value function, present value function, rate function, NPER function. Okay, so these four Excel functions, they work, it work for single cash flows. All right, and the only caveat is the payment argument is set to 0. All right, so these are all the things payment is set equal to 0, not 1, 2, or 3. All right, when you copy across, Excel sometimes it's too smart. All right, so you have these functions that work for single cash flows. The payment argument is 0, but now you can also actually use these Excel functions for annuities. All right, so these Excel functions, they still work for annuities. All right, but the payment is the constant cash flow per period. All right, this is extremely important. So now we're moving away for single cash flows. We're moving into annuities. In annuities, there is a constant cash flow every period when you use future value function to calculate the future value for the annuity, that payment is the constant cash flow in the annuity. All right, so I can actually copy this down here as well. So these are actually the same. And in addition, you also have a payment function here. All right, so payment function, this calculates the constant cash flow per period in the annuity. Okay, so these are actually very subtle things. All right, so there's no payment function for single cash flows. As we said, for single cash flows, there is no periodic payment, or there is no periodic cash flows in between. So payment function does not work for single cash flows, but payment function is available for annuities. Okay, actually, I want to discuss one more thing. All right, so for these Excel functions, all right, and I should actually say in addition, all right, type, remember the fifth argument is type. Type is set to 1 for annuity due. And type is set to 0 for ordinary annuity. Okay, so these are the very important details for Excel functions for annuities. All right, so let's move on to one example and let's see how we can actually apply this Excel functions. Okay, example number 10. All right, I know you guys can't wait to have the examples. All right, so you are interested in buying a new sports car costing $21,000. Okay, so the car price is $21,000. All right, and you can only afford $5,000 as the down payment. All right, so down payment is $5,000. Some of you may have a hard time understanding what this means. So this is basically the money you pay down out of your pocket. Okay, so in other words, you have $5,000 of your own money, and you can actually use this to apply to the car price. So that means you're going to borrow the difference, which is actually 21,000 and minus 5,000. So that's actually 16,000. Okay, we are actually assuming when you buy the car, there's no other transaction cost. This is not true in the real world. In the real world, when you buy a car, you have to pay, for instance, sales tax, title, insurance, and so on and so forth. All right, and the interest rate here is 11.8%. Okay, this is the annual interest rate. And the question here is, what is the level monthly payment that will actually pay off the loan in 48 months? So the term is 48 months. Okay, so we're talking about a car. So it's a 4-year car loan. If you're talking about a house, you might be talking about a 15 or 20 or 30-year loan. All right, so the term is actually 48 months. I should say months. Okay, so the question is asking, what is the level monthly payment that will actually pay off this, a car loan? All right, if you actually pay, at the end. Okay. Also, if you pay at the beginning. All right, so what is the level of monthly payment? All right, so what's the analysis here? Well, this is, well, first of all, you borrow the $16,000 today, and you're going to pay off this over time. So you're going to make a total of 48 payments. And because there's a keyword called level, so this is the constant, it's the same monthly payment. So this is annuity. And, this is annuity. All right. So we're looking for, the constant, cash flow per period, which is your monthly payment. All right. So you can actually, find out, at the, all right, month's end, what is your monthly payment? Okay. So we know that if you want to find the constant cash flow in this annuity, you can do a payment function here. All right, so let's go ahead and plug in the numbers into this Excel function. Okay, be very careful. This Excel function is actually taking so many arguments. It gives you only one number back. So this is a very demanding Excel function, and make sure you take care of it. All right, so the rate is 11.8% over 12. Okay, number of periods here is 48 months. Remember, everything in Excel functions is in periods. So in this case, everything is in months. I'm using the monthly interest rate. I'm counting 48 months. And the present value is, well, the present value is really the loan you're taking out. It's a loan, so it's $16,000. Okay. Future value, well, after you pay the last monthly payment, you're done. All right, so you do not pay anything more. So the future value is 0. And we're talking about the month-end payment. So in this case, Excel is actually saying if you're actually making this, cash flows payments, at the end of every period, so you put down a 0. 0 is for end of the period. All right, so if you do that, this will actually get you your constant monthly payment. That's $419.77. All right, so now I can actually say what is my equal monthly payment if I pay at the beginning. All right, you might want to pause the video and think about how you can actually play with this Excel function. All right, but I'm going to copy this down here, and I'm going to say the only change I have to make is change the last argument 0 to 1, because now I'm dealing with annuity due. All right, so if that's the case, you're going to pay $415.68. Okay, so this is very straightforward. All right, I think some of you might be confused by this argument of 16,000 and the future value is 0. So if you are actually a little confused, let me just draw you a little timeline here. This is today, this is 1 month, and these are all the months in between. This is month 48. All right, so let's look at the cash flows. So today you get a loan that's $16,000, and you're asking what is this equal monthly payment in the following 48 months. So you see that these are the constant cash flows in this annuity. There's no future value here. If you want to think of 0, you can actually put a 0. That is the present value. That's the future value. This is the number of periods. The interest rate is 11.8% over 12. So we're looking for the payments. All right, this is the months and the payments. The way I indicate this question mark underneath 1 all the way through 48, that is the end of each period. So that is the ordinary annuity case. All right, if you want to actually do this simple timeline for the annuity due, everything is going to be shifted towards the left for 1 periods. All right, so this is example number 10. Now I'm going to use this example. I'm going to actually discuss a very important Excel functionality called solver. Okay, so Excel solver can actually do a lot of things. All right, so let me just take down a little note here. Excel solver can solve equations, okay, can maximize and minimize. All right, minimize objective functions. Okay, so this is a very powerful tool. All right, so I'm going to actually outline the major steps, the 3-step procedure for using solver to solve problems. Okay, so I'm going to use this example here because you have known the answer here already. So if you're actually paying at the end of each month, you're going to pay $419.77. So now we can actually focus on the solver usage itself. All right, so I'm going to share with you my 3-step procedure for using solver. Step number 1, take a guess. of the month's end payment. All right, so you see that if you're using the payment function here, you can actually get the answer directly. Some of you may wonder, why do I have to learn solver? Well, that's because in some cases, you do not have the Excel functions applicable to the question you're working on. All right, so in that case, you may have to deal with solver. All right, so that's reason number one. Reason number two, as we said later on, when we actually deal with modern portfolio theory, we can actually use solver to maximize, to minimize. For example, to maximize the portfolio's Sharpe ratio. If you don't know what is a Sharpe ratio, please go back to Finance 201 and look up your notes. All right, and you can also minimize the portfolio standard deviation. All right, so that would be very useful tool for us to command. All right. So I'm going to actually take a guess of the monthly end payment, and I'm just going to take a very interesting guess. I'm going to divide 16,000 by 48. Now that's $333.33. Now we know this is not the right answer because the interest rate here is not zero. If the interest rate is zero, like you may have seen from the TV commercials where they say 0% APR financing. All right, if the interest rate is artificially set to zero, then yes, if you pay $333.33, and if you pay this amount 48 times, you're going to pay off 16,000. But we know the answer is not correct in this case because you're actually paying 11.8% interest per year. So you're actually, underpaying. All right, but nonetheless, I'm going to take this as my guess. And this, step number one, all of you can do it. All right, if you're looking for something, take a guess at that, quantity. All right, take a guess at what you're looking for. All right, you can take a while to guess. All right, step number two, use the guess to calculate some quantity. Now, this is the most important step. This is also the most confusing step. All right, so and this can differ across different users. All right, if you're actually trying to calculate one thing in the second step, that can work. Some others may actually use the guess to calculate some other quantity that can work as well. All right, so here, all right, I'm going to actually pick one thing to calculate, and then I can actually show you how we can actually pick other things to calculate. And at the end of the day, the different quantities we choose to calculate, really it does not matter. All of them should actually produce the correct answer. Okay, here we choose to calculate. All right, I'm very detailed here because this is the first time you guys are dealing with solver. All right, here we choose to calculate the amount of loan we can pay off if we pay the guessed amount per month. All right, so in other words, I'm looking at something as follows. Okay, 0, 1, and this is 48. Okay, and monthly payment here. Well, as I'm saying, this actually is the guessed amount here, and it's the guessed amount here as well. All right, $333.33. So the question here is the present value of all payments. What is that? All right, so I'm trying to find out, the amount of the loan we can pay off if we can actually pay the guessed payments every month. So really, this is an annuity here now. This annuity has 48 periods. The constant cash flow is the guessed amount, and the interest rate is 11.8%. So if I want to find what's the present value of the of all the monthly payments, I can do the present value function for this annuity. So you see that I'm doing a lot of thinking here because I have to understand the conditions under which Excel functions can apply. All right, so the rate is 11.8% over 12, and this is for 48 periods. The payment is actually, you're making a payment, so it's negative, and this is important. I'm going to actually use the cell reference here. All right, a lot of times when you actually use solver, you think you have the right setup, but you just can't produce the right answer. And in many cases, that's because you failed to use cell reference for your guess. Okay, and feature value is 0 here. Type is 0 as well because I'm actually paying at the month's end. Okay, in other words, I'm trying to replicate the 419.77. All right, so this is telling me that if you pay $333.33, then the loan you can actually pay off is $12,705.31. All right, so I want to emphasize two things here, and I want to actually make this very, very obvious for you to see. Okay, number one, use the cell reference for the gas you took, all right, in step 2. Okay, so if you don't do that, you're going to have problems. All right, so use the cell reference for the gas you take for step 2. All right, and secondly, you can actually do a double check, check to see if or I should say check to confirm that if you change the gas, the quantity in step 2 will change as well. All right, this is very important. Okay, so in other words, you're trying to actually build a link between these two steps. In step number 1, you take a gas. In step number 2, well, these two steps are not separated. These two steps are actually linked. If you change the gas in step number 1, your step number 2 quantity should change as well. So let me actually verify this. So how about I pay $340? If I pay $340, well, because I paid a little more, I can actually pay off a higher loan. But still, that's not enough. So how about $400? If I pay $400, well, I'm getting closer to the $16,000 loan I'm taking. But still, this is not enough. So I know the answer should be more than $400. So how about $500? If I pay $500, then all of a sudden I actually pay more than what I need to pay. This is now $19,000. This is actually over $16,000. So I know the answer is going to be somewhere between $400 and $500. All right. So what about $450? Well, $450 you're still overpaying. You actually paid more than enough. So the answer is actually somewhere between $400 and $450. Now imagine you can actually continue in this manner. You can narrow down your search. All right. But fortunately, in Excel solver, you don't have to do that on your own. You can actually invoke solver. Okay. And when you invoke solver, I have to show you how you can actually install or activate solver plugin. Okay. So make sure your solver plugin is activated. And I'm using the PC Excel to illustrate this. If you're using a Mac Excel, if you don't know how to activate your solver plugin, please let me know. All right, so watch me closely. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to More, and I'm going to go to Options. All right, so you might want to pause the video here and take some notes. All right, and I go to Add-ins. Okay, so this actually brings up all the Excel application add-ins. All right, and here you see that I have solver add-in listed under active application add-ins. In other words, add-in in the solver is actually activated in my PC Excel. If it's not activated in your PC Excel, solver should actually be listed here. But if they're listed here, then you can actually narrow it down here and look at manage Excel add-ins and click go, and then check the box for solver. Okay, check the box for solver, and and there are some other useful tool pack. For example, analysis tool pack. You can actually do a lot of statistical analysis by using that tool pack. All right, so click OK, and now where can I find it? It's actually under Data tab. Okay, right here, and then there's a question mark and an arrow. That's solver. Okay, so File, Options, add-ins, then manage add-ins, okay, and then check the a box for solver add-in, and go to data tab and locate solver. Okay, so that's a brief recap of what I just did. All right, so now I'm going to actually bring up solver here, and I'm going to actually look at how I'm going to set up solver here. So solver parameter dialog, this is a very important dialog. This is how you can actually tell Excel solve this problem for you. All right, so here my objective cell is the present value of all the payments. All right, I don't want to maximize this. I don't want to minimize this. I want to solve this. So I want to set this equal to the value of 16,000. All right, so this is my objective. And I want to actually Excel to change the guess. All right, so my guess is actually the month end payment guess I took in the first step. All right, and then I can actually ignore the rest because there's no other constraints. So if you have constraints later on when we do portfolio theory, yes, we're going to have constraints. At that time, you can actually deal with the constraints. Okay, you can leave the rest as it is, and then click solve. The solver says I found a solution here. All constraints and optimality conditions are satisfied. Of course, there's none. All right, and what do you want to do? All right, do you want to keep the solver solution? Well, that looks like a good choice. So I'm going to click OK. And now you see that that number 450 or 333.33 or whatever you have played with, that number has been changed to 419.77. And this is precisely the number you saw from using the payment function. So yes, we are replicating the answer. All right, so let me recap what we just did. All right, set C193 as the objective cell. All right, set it equal to the $16,000 loan because that's the loan you're taking. All right, by changing the gas, which is actually B188. All right, so that's how you're going to set up the solver. Okay, let me just bring up this again, just for you to see this again. All right, so my objective cell is the present value, or it's the quantity you actually calculated in the second step. All right, and the changing variable cell is the guess. Okay, so I should probably say, remember, all right, the objective cell is the quantity calculated in step 2. All right, and the changing variable cell is the guess it took in step 1. All right, so make sure you solve so you don't maximize, you don't minimize. All right, so this is a very good place for me to talk about Excel solver. Actually, I should probably make this in bold. All right, so we just replicate this 419.77, and now I can actually assign something for you to do. Ad hoc homework. Please use solver to replicate the month end month beginning payment of 415.68. Okay. All right. So that is my demonstration for using Excel solver. I know some of you might want to watch this video again and again. All right. If if necessary, that's totally fine. All right. So let's look at example number 12. Okay, I'm moving away from solver and I'm moving into example number 12. All right, example number 12 on your lecture note. Okay, so comparing the cash flow streams. All right, so a person has the following options in the settlement of a life insurance policy. All right, so life insurance policy settlement. Okay, what is a settlement? Well, you have two parties, they disagree, so you have to settle the dispute. All right, so in most of the cases, one party ends up paying the other party. All right, so in this case, insurance company is paying you. All right, so you have two options. Option number one is a cash settlement. It's a one-time cash, and it's $100,000. And if you take that, insurance company is even with you. All right, they don't owe you anything else. All right, $100,000. Okay. And then option number two, instead of getting this $100,000 lump sum, insurance company says we're going to pay you monthly, and each month we're going to pay you $1,000, and for how long? Well, for the next 20 years. Okay, so if the interest rate is 12%, which option is better? All right, so that is a very simple question here. All I need to realize is that we are comparing these two options. So one, it's a one-time cash. But option number two, well, option number two is actually, series of monthly payments, of 1,000 for 20 years. So if you want to compare these two, you would have to make sure you're comparing the value at the same time point. Okay. All right, need to ensure that the value stands at the same time point. Okay, so how do I make sure? Well, I have to use either discounting or compounding. So option number one, all right, so the present value is 100,000. Okay, it's actually immediately available to you if you go with option number one. So that's present value. Option number two, what is the present value here? So I'm comparing apples to apples. I want to find the present value of option number two. All right, so let's look at option number two here for a second. This is a monthly payment of 1,000. It's for 20 years. Interest rate does not change. And it's at the end. Yes, it's an annuity. So present value of, option two, annuity. Okay, so I'm going to do the present value function here. The rate is 12%, and this is annual, so I should divide this by 12. And this is actually for 20 years, okay? So 12 months per year, so you have 240 months. And the payment is actually your receiving payment, so that's 1,000, okay? It's a cash inflow. And, the future value is, well, after the last 1,000 monthly payment, the insurance company is done with you, so there's no other payment. There's no other cash flow in months 240. All right, so that is the present value. And yes, this number is negative, saying if you want to get those cash flows in the future, you have to pay for those cash flows today. And the price you should be paying is $90,819. So yes, option number one is better. Okay, because it has a higher present value. So you are actually better off by just going with option number one. All right, so this is very, very straightforward. Okay. All right, so we discussed so far. We have discussed, the Excel functions for annuities and the solver, functionality in Excel. All right, so now let's actually combine what we know already to solve example number 16 on your lecture notes. Okay. Again, please have your lecture note, side by side so that you can actually, refer to it. All right. On her 10th birthday, Linda Jones' parents decide to deposit $4,000 in a savings account for their daughter. Okay. They intend to put additional $4,000 in the account each year on her, 11th, 12th, and all the way to the 17th birthday. All right, so, these are responsible parents, and they are planning for their daughter's education. And we know higher education cost is getting absurd these days. All right, so all account, balances will earn 8% per year. So you're looking at different kinds of investments, and these is apparently better than the average return or yield you can earn on the corporate bonds. So you might be talking about some kind of mutual funds, after fee, net of fee, returns. All right, And then on Linda's 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st birthdays, well, these are the 4-year college. Her parents will need to withdraw $20,000 to pay for Linda's college education. All right, so you're talking about saving for some periods and then withdrawing for the college education. All right, the question is the $4,000 enough? All right, so this is the question here, and this is about saving for college education. All right, and we have the savings period. Okay, from years when Linda is 10, 11, all the way to 17. All right, and then you have the withdrawal period. Withdrawal period, and these are actually from 18, okay, 19, 20, and 21st. All right, and we know the interest rate here. This is how money travels along the timeline. Interest rate is 8%. Okay, so the question is, all right, withdrawal is actually from this, here, and the withdrawal amount is actually, $20,000 per year. Okay, so you're talking about $20,000 per year for room and board. So definitely this is not Quinnipiac. All right, Quinnipiac is actually charging much higher, prices for tuition and room and board. All right, so the question is $4,000 enough? Okay, so how do we go about this? All right, so the analysis here is, well, first of all, you have all this numbers there, which is kind of confusing because you have the savings and then you have the withdrawals. All right, so but in our framework, this is a multiple cash flow structure. Okay, so this is a multiple cash flow structure here. All right. Okay, and there are different kinds of cash flows here. So one is the cash inflow, one is the cash outflow, or one is the deposit or savings, one is the withdrawal. All right, and cash flows stand at different points in time. Okay, so you have 10 through 17. This is the savings period, and you have 18 to 21. That is the withdrawal periods. So how should we want to go about this? Well, need to make sure that okay, what they need. All right, so this is the thought process. Okay, what they need is equal to what they have. All right, in present value terms. Okay, or by using the same time point to define what they have and what they need. All right, so that is the thought process. Okay, so I'm going to actually build a timeline here, and if you want to think about annuities, you may actually be able to find the answer by using Excel functions, but that can be very confusing. All right, so I'm going to actually look at the time period here. And this is I can say years. All right, Linda on her 10th birthday, so their parents her parents is actually depositing, so this is a period of 10, and this is 11. Well, I should say this is equal to 10 plus 1 here, and we're going to look at all the way until Linda becomes 21. Okay, because that's her last year college education. All right, you can actually map this into the periods. So this is 0, this is 1, and you have all the way to 21. All right, and then we're talking about two different kinds of cash flows. One is the deposit, one is the savings. One is the withdrawal. So I'm going to actually look at the withdrawal. All right. Okay. So you may ask me, how about the savings? Well, I can look at that later. Right? It doesn't matter which sequence I'm looking at. All right. Which withdrawal per period. So we know that they need to withdraw 20,000, on Linda's 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st birthdays. So every time when you work on the cash flows, focus on the cash flow amount and the timing. So I'm going to look at the withdrawal here, and that's the first withdrawal. That's 20,000. That's the end of period 18. All right, and actually it's the same withdrawal per year for the college education. So maybe the college tuition is actually fixed. All right, so you get actually you get a package deal, and the total cost is fixed for the 4 years, which is kind of nice. All right, so now you can actually look at these are different withdrawals. Now these are actually standing at different time points, so you cannot simply add them. If you simply add them, you're violating the time value for money principle. Okay, so we know we're better than that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually define the common time point, define all the values or cash flows by using the same time point, which is period 0. Okay, so I'm going to actually look at withdrawal, present value of each withdrawal. Okay. So I'm going to do the discounting here now. All right. I want to do the discounting for the year 18 withdrawal, and I want to copy across. All right. So think about this for a second. I'm doing the discounting. So this is the future value now. All right. This is going back to how we treat multiple cash flows. We're just breaking this 4 withdrawals into 4 simple 4 single cash flows. So for the first one, really you're going from 18 back to 10, or period 8 back to 0. All right, so I'm going to discount this, at 1 plus 8%, which is the interest rate raised to the power of 8. Okay, so I'm going back from period 8 to 0. All right, so that's a good formula here, so I can actually execute the calculation and copy across. Okay, so that's going to be the present value of all the withdrawals. So I can say present value of all withdrawals. All right, so I'm going to actually add up all these present values here now. All right, so this is reminding or emphasizing, the fact that these present values are actually defined at period 0 or 8-10. Okay, so this is the present value of all withdrawal. This is the present value of what they need, okay, because they need this amount to fund Linda's college education. All right, so now let's actually look at what they have. Well, what they have is coming out of the savings. So I'm going to use Excel solver to find the necessary savings per year. Okay, so step number 1, remember when you use Excel solver, you always follow the 3-step procedure. So I'm going to calculate, step number 1, I'm going to guess the required savings per year from year 10 to year 17. All right, this is when they're going to actually save. So I'm just going to say, savings per year. So I'm going to take a random guess. So the question actually provides a guess, which is 4,000. So I'm just going to take that guess, and that's my step number 1. You can guess any other numbers. You can guess $1 if you want. All right. So step number 2, use the guess to calculate some quantity. All right. So the quantity you want to calculate is actually, a little confusing, because you can actually choose to calculate different quantities. So here, I'm going to use the guess to calculate the present value of all savings, okay? Because remember, we want to, bring both ends meet, all right? So we want to make sure both ends meet. So the present value of what they have should be equal to the present value of what they need. And we found out the present value of what they need already, so we're just going to find the present value of what they have. And if I save $4,000 per year, what do I have in present value terms? So, remember, the PV is defined by using period 0. Okay, that's the common time point we have, selected. All right, we have chosen. All right, so I'm going to look at how I'm going to calculate this present value here, and I'm going to use the timeline here to do this. Okay, so savings per year. So I know that today I'm going to have $4,000 savings. That's my guess. And in 1 year, which is in one period, which is in year 11, I'm going to have another $4,000 savings and another $4,000 savings. And some of you notice that, do you want to actually do it this way? Well, yes, if you want, you can actually do it this way, but this is kind of cumbersome. So let me actually here introduce one thing called, absolute self-reference. Okay, so if I just, put down B237 and copy across, and I stop in period 17, you notice that these are actually zeros. Okay, so because Excel is copying across, so Excel is actually looking at C237, and there's nothing there. So Excel is interpreting that to be zero. So there's no cash flow, there's no savings, here, because you don't have anything here. Okay, so these are actually savings we are actually going to, model, and these are zeros. So these are not what we want. Okay, so this is the relative self-reference. Okay, and we know that's not what we want here in this case. All right, so watch me closely. I'm going to actually say, all right, I'm still having B237, but you know what? I want to actually look at B237 when I copy across, because that's the annual savings in each of the following years. So in order for me to do that, all I need to do is to add $ before the column B and $ before the row 237. So this these extra $, they are like locks. In other words, I'm locking down this cell reference. Okay, of course I'm still getting 4,000, but now when I copy across, I'm actually getting 4,000 for the other years, and this is known as absolute cell reference. Okay, and this is what we need. All right. And so, some of you notice that if you don't want to do it this way, you can actually say this is equal to B237. And if you're using the PC Excel, you can actually press F4. So I just pressed F4. Excel actually, adds back the $ before B and before 237. Okay. All right. So these are the savings per year. So now I can actually say present value of each savings. Okay, so I'm going to actually do the discounting now. All right, so these are actually 8 different discounting, but I'm going to build only one strong formula and a copy across. Okay, so I'm going to look at this one here. This is divided by 1 plus 8% raised to the power of 0, because you're looking at the same time period, so you have no period to discount. Okay, but it's a good formula, so I can actually copy this across now. All right, so you see that I have already implemented my 2 nodes here from the Excel solver functionality. Okay, remember, use the cell reference and to check to confirm that if you change the gas, your quantity in the second step is going to change. So how about we save, let's say, $5,000 here? Okay, yes, everything changed. All right, so that's good. All right, so there's a link between these 2 steps. All right, so now step number 3. Okay, so I'm going to actually, look at, before I jump to step number 3, I should actually say present value of all savings. Okay, so that's going to be the summation of all these present values. All right, so now I can actually look at this as this is the PV of what they have. All right, so now you notice that, hey, step number 3, you just need to correct your guess, okay, by invoking solver. All right, so now you actually let solver solve this problem for you, because you're looking at the present value of what they have, and you're looking at the present value of what they need. So imagine you can actually change this to 6,000, and this is actually getting closer, but still not enough. So if you change this to 7,000, all right, then this actually is more than enough. So the answer is between 6,000 and 7,000. All right. Fortunately, you're gonna have to do this trial and error approach. Instead, you can just invoke solver, and I'm going to actually set B243 as the objective. Okay, and I want to set it equal to, all right, the present value of what they need, which is actually 38,651.884. Okay, so that's my objective. I want to do this by changing the guess. All right, the guess is actually in cell B237. Okay, all right, so that's how you can actually set up solver. That is one way. So let me just go ahead and we'll produce the answer here now. All right, click on solver. Solver takes us back to the previous example. All right, so I'm going to scroll down here. My objective here is now this number here. I want to set this equal to the value of, okay, so the value of, all right, it looks like I have to scroll down and scroll up a little bit. Okay, let me just minimize my ribbon. All right, and let me go to data, go to solver here, and this is my objective. I want to set that equal to 38,651.884. Okay, I even carry 3 decimals, and I want to do this by changing my guess, which is actually the $7,000. All right, so there's no other constraint. So click solve. Solver says. Solver says you're going to save about $6,388. Okay, that is one way. Alternatively, you can actually, I can actually look at the difference in the present values. Okay, in other words, I can look at what's the gap. All right, so this is the present value of the withdrawal, and this is the present value of the savings. So now that difference is actually still quite large. So it looks like solver is not getting us the correct answer, in the first, iteration. All right, so I'm going to, if that's the case, I can actually set up my solver alternatively. All right, so I'm going to set B250 as the objective. All right, I want to set it equal to 0 by changing, again, B237. All right, let's see whether this works. Okay, so let me go to data, let me go to solver here, and that's my objective. I want to set that equal to the value of 0, and I think I made a mistake. That's why it does not. And I want to do this by changing my, guess here, and click solve, and yes, that one is now 0. So solver finds the solution of $6,227.78, and that is how much they should save every year. Okay, I believe we can still replicate this. I think I just made a mistake, when I typed down the numbers. So let me just verify this should work as well. All right, so if I actually take this to be my objective cell, I should actually set this equal to 38,651.884. Okay, and if that's the case, yes, that still works. Okay, so it's still $6,227.76. All right, 78 cents. All right, so this is a very complicated example in the sense that we are combining the timeline technique along with solver functionality. Okay, but you see that the very power of the combination of these two things actually, is really what we need, for a question like this. Okay, so we also consider the time value of money principle, because all these savings and withdrawals, they actually occur at different time points, and we actually bring them together to a common time point, and we actually make sure they are equalized in present value terms. All right, so this is the conclusion of our time value of money and discounted cash flow discussion. And please take work on the homework problems and let me know if you have any questions. All right.